Good evening, everyone. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us for this presentation of the Ballot Access Committee. We'll be presenting using ballot access drives to build your state party. We have a nice collection of speakers with experience throughout the country in building ballot access for the Green Party of the United States. And they're each going to be giving a short presentation, and then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. So please, we do encourage you to come with questions that you may have. I will be watching the chat once we have once speakers have finished speaking. And then we can go from there. So we're going to start off with our first speaker. Our first speaker is going to be Eric LaRue. Eric is the Nevada State Party co-chair. He also serves on the Ballot Access Committee as well as the Accreditation Committee. He's going to speak to us for a few minutes about what the Ballot Access Committee has been doing and what we plan to achieve in this coming cycle. So I'm going to hand the floor on over to Eric.
Thank you. As mentioned, I'm the Nevada Green Party co-chair and on the Ballot Access Committee. So what's been going on the Ballot Access Committee, which there are other members of that committee here presenting today, but we have been focusing on each of individual states, what their individual requirements are, and how we can support each state in meeting those requirements. Particularly here in Nevada, what's been going on and what has been a key focus on, as you might be aware, Nevada is one of the states that had particular problems with ballot access last year due to some problems coming from the Secretary of State's office, some misinformation that led to lawsuits by the Nevada Democratic Party that resulted in us not being on the ballot last year, which was very unfortunate. And so we as a state party are very focused on correcting those issues and mitigating against that eventuality coming back in 2026 and 2028. To that end, so for example, here in Nevada, we have two criteria that can get us statewide ballot access. One is a matter of petition signatures, which we had met for 2024, but the debacle was that the Secretary of State's office had given us the wrong form, and then the Nevada Democratic Party used that to claim that our signatures were not valid. But petition signatures is one criteria. The other is registered green voters. And that's our focus right now, is registering new voters in the Green Party to meet that criteria and especially overcome any objections that can say, hey, your criteria aren't valid. So to that end, we're looking at various events that we can set up tables and conduct registration drives, especially since we don't have any sort of elections this year. Our next election will be next year, the midterms. So we have an event called First Fridays that the various counties in Nevada put on that we're looking to set up events for. Another area of focus is in the schools. We have two major universities here in Nevada, UNR and UNLV, and we're looking at registration drives at those two campuses. The other area that's been mentioned is actually going down into the high schools here in Nevada and probably in many other states too. You can register someone who is at least 17 who will be 18 by the next election. And given the fact that here, and again, in probably many other states as well, the next election is not until 2026, that's probably a really good resource for you to consider for conducting registration drives. Again, you just set up the table and they're allowed to register with whatever party they choose, but that opens up the dialogue to have the conversation. Hey, here, if they ask, why would I want to register with the Green Party? Well, here are the reasons why. And you encourage that dialogue. You basically talk about all the reasons why we're building the Green Party basically in order to do the things that everyone wants the Democrats to be doing, but they're not. And that encourages them to build up the Green Party, to get more Green Party candidates on the ballot and actually into office to enact those policies. And another discussion, and it sounds like Patrick is going to be including that in his presentation later on, but again, having discussions about not just registering as Green Party voters, but actually running for office as Green Party candidates. We have, I mean, there are offices up and down the ballot, from local offices to state legislatures, state assembly, state senate, and statewide office, all the way up to the federal level. Common complaint that we hear from outside is that we only run these big name offices, and that, but this is an opportunity to have discussions about, you know, we're running people up and down the board, and you could be that person to make a difference on the local level. Now, one office that we are particularly focused on, and given the history I presented at the beginning, you'll see why. But here in Nevada, we are keenly focused specifically on the Secretary of State's office, because if we can get a Green Party in there to get in there and clean house so that the shenanigans that happened last year do not happen again. So that's, and in other states, again, the Secretary of State is the one that has authority over elections, and having a Green Party or any third party individual in that office can be a huge asset to getting access to third parties, including the Green Party. And as a matter of fact, I know in Indiana, I see Sarah in the audience, and she and I've been supporting Indiana in their ballot access drive, but a key part of their criteria just so happens to be the Secretary of State's race. So if you're having conversations about registering people into the Green Party, inviting them to run for office, one key area of focus might want to be, you might want to have that be the Secretary of State's office. Again, that way you get someone in there who can be an asset to get access to these candidates in these other races, be it local, be it state legislature, other statewide office, governor, attorney general, or federal office. So that's what we're up to. That's our strategy. I see some questions in the chat. Let me
Absolutely,
if I may, I
yes.
can go ahead and.
So first of all, I want to say it's very inspiring to see the efforts and the links you're going to in Nevada, and the example that you're setting for the rest of us states. We do have a question in the chat. What plans do you all have to organize non-voters in Nevada?
Very, very good question. Honestly, other than just conducting these drives and, you know, opening the door, excuse me, opening the door to these conversations about here's why we're planning to enact these policies that, you know, the two major parties are not enacting. We haven't addressed non-voters that extensively here in Nevada yet, but that's definitely a good insight to have. I mean, we have some independent data tracking that says that voters who are not registered with a party are currently the largest block of registered voters here in Nevada. Deep canvassing. Can you say a little bit more about what you mean by deep canvassing? Like what? That way I can address that more.
This is Chris, another one of the panelists. So deep canvassing is the idea that you engage in long-term conversations in your community. It is not knocking doors because it's time for an election. This starts years before an election. You start in conversation, you start making connections, and it really, really leans into the idea that relationships and trust are the only thing that's moving people. Memes don't move people. None of this move, if you want to move someone, if you want to change someone's opinion, it's almost always personal experience for themselves or people that they trust and respect. And so if we want to grow as a party on the local level, we need to really live by not just showing up for elections. We need to be organizing in our communities every single day and having these long repeated conversations where hey, we talked 3 months ago. Here's what's happened. Here's what's going on in the city. Here's how that relates to national politics. Here's this thing, that you can get involved in. And, that long-term investment is what will lead to something. And the Australian Greens have seen huge success with a multi-year deep canvassing program.
Got it. Thank you, Chris. I will say I'm the state co-chaired on these committees, but my participation has been relatively recent and rapid. I'm not saying that to brag. I'm just saying that to say, this is an example to follow of, yeah, we're looking to have these conversations over the long term and why these issues are important. And then once those conversations happen, that's an opportunity to have people really, really engaged and say, this is an opportunity for you to take action. Doesn't matter if you don't have an extensive amount of experience, you've got lived experience, and here's a way to take action on that and actually make some change happen. Once again, that the two major parties that do depend on extensive amounts of experience aren't doing right now.
All right, I'm going to move on to our next speaker now. First of all, thank you so very much for bringing in the experience that your state is having and teaching us how we can, in fact, as the title says, use ballot access to grow our parties. I was part of Jill's campaign, and I remember what happened with the Secretary of State. It was even worse than you said, because we started with the right form and they told us to change forms to the wrong form. And that was of course both excellent.
Yeah, we were not happy about that.
All right. Next up, let me get my document up. We're going to have Gini. Gini Lester out of Illinois is our co-chair here on the Ballot Access Committee. She's a veteran of the Howie Hawkins campaign, and she's going to talk to us about her experience in dealing with state election boards, which I think flows very nicely from our previous presentation by Eric. So, Gini, I'm going to give you the floor.
Okay, hey. When I joined the Green Party, I was involved for many years in the state and local politics. The Green Party, we had really large local and one pretty large state. And then I was told, don't get involved with national. But I had things that I wanted to accomplish. So I joined the Eco Action Committee, and then I joined the Lavender Caucus. And then, and I'm not real sure how, but I got on Howie Hawkins' campaign in 2020, and I am extremely grateful for that experience. I got onto the ballot access, I believe it was in May of 2019, and I knew nothing, absolutely nothing. And I had to ask people, what's this, what's that? And what I have learned is complicated. So I would call the state Green parties, and I'd say, hey, tell me about your ballot access. And I found out there was like one or two people who knew about it. The rest of the folks says, oh, I don't know. So-and-so knows about it, And so I would finally get a hold of so-and-so, and that would get them to tell me as much as they could, So it's pretty, risky to have a small place, a small pool of knowledge. And I did find a couple of states where the person who had the knowledge wasn't there anymore. So I ended up having to call the state election boards themselves. Tell me about how to get on the ballot here. And in some cases, I remember in Mississippi, I called up the state election board and I said, ask a question. And she said, oh, you're with the Green Party, right? Yeah. She says, tell Jan to call me. Jan is the Mississippi state chair. tell Jan to call me because I usually see her right now. She needs to get her documents in for before the deadline, and tell her I said hi, you know. And it was just, they knew her. I'm pretty sure they would have called her if she didn't get the documents in time. But then another state, the director themselves got on the phone with me, and we went round and round and round about the election code because it was so complicated, so hard, and I didn't care. I mean, I ended up calling this fellow about 3 times trying to understand this code because, like Eric, discovered, people in these elections boards, they think they know the stuff, but they don't. Some of them do, some of them don't. And so you actually have to check off what they are telling you against what the code says, the legislative code. So I talked with this director. I can't remember if it was Montana or someplace. He was a nice guy, but I had to call him 2 or 3 times to understand, what does this code actually saying. But it used to be that state election code would change about every 6 months or every year or every 5 years, and things were pretty static. Well, since 2020, things are changing almost monthly, and people in the elections boards are, a lot of times, a change has been made and they didn't get the memo, And so they might be telling you information based on what it was 2 weeks ago, but in the interim, a lawsuit has come in. They're not kept abreast of the new lawsuit, which changed the code, which changed what you're supposed to do, changed the form, So you definitely, no matter what they tell you, you got to find the code itself and make sure that you understand what the election law is. And even then, it might be that you would have to sue, because there is so much lawfare now in elections. Voting's a big damn deal. So, they're really trying to change voter access. They're trying to get hold of voter rolls from each state. But as it stands now, each state has their own election laws. But the feds want to take it over. That's what the plan is, I think. But anyway, each state has their own election and election code, and they have their own forms. I remember, I believe it was Ohio. We turned in petition that was on a legal yellow pad, and that was acceptable. But there's another state that says that you have to have it on this size paper with this front and back, with these margins, clipped, so that they're really varied. So I relied a lot on Richard Winger. I called him all the time of Ballot Access News. He got me a lot of information, and he is also a good resource. I put in the chat the link to Ballot Access News. I also try to keep up with what's going on. Election Line is another one that I rely on a lot, and I get daily information about the changes. Another one about elections is the Fulcrum. So I have these here if you want to do it. And then the national state legislations, state election legislations. I can't remember exactly what it stands for, but this one has for all 50 states. And there's a couple of guys that volunteer to keep the green pages or the green papers. It's called the green papers. They're not associated with the Green Party, but there is a lot of information about different deadlines and stuff for states. And then, of course, you have to know the GPS rules and procedures. So just copy those, and if you need it, if it helps you, fine. If it doesn't help you, fine. But
Thank-
if you can get your person who knows ballot access for your state party to join the ballot access committee, that would be awesome. Okay, that's all.
That's an excellent call to action there, Ginny. The Ballot Access Committee always needs knowledgeable hands. And yes, this is a great place for your person with that knowledge who knows how to read statutes, even if they haven't read them yet, to come and join the Ballot Access Committee.
Adam's hand is up.
Yep, absolutely. Adam, please go ahead. Thank you.
I was just wanting to mention that when in Utah, when we have actually had to have petitions signed, there's a lot of changes that have been happening with a lot of petition in Utah. And the thing is I talked with the lieutenant governor's office here one time, and I asked them if there was going to ever be a way that they could change the law so that people that can't really fill out a paper ballot, you know what I'm saying, or a petition for the paper, petition that could, is there a way of having an electronic option? And when I talked to them, they said, well, they've changed the law to a point where you cannot, the party would have to choose either to use paper petitions or to use electronic, but they can't use both, which for some people it is easy to fill out a paper one, but for some people who are disabled, you actually would have to actually you'd have to be able to use the online. And so some people, it would be good to get both options available, because I know I'm legally blind, and there's some people, when I once was gathering signatures, I asked someone who was in a wheelchair and it was disabled as well if he wanted to sign my petition, and he's like, well, unfortunately it's going to be hard for me to do that because of my disability. And I just said but he had a friend with him, and I'm like, I'm not going to say anything, but if you want your friend to help you fill it out and then you just sign it, then I'm not going to say anything. So he signed the petition. But if you know what I'm saying, so accessibility is a big thing that can be effective when it comes to petitions. Over.
Thank you so much for that insight, Adam. We do have a question in the chat, and the question is, what range of cooperativeness have you experienced? This is to Jenny, I'm sorry. What range of cooperativeness have you experienced between election boards, and how have you dealt with boards with lower levels of cooperativeness? Have you dealt with boards that are actually actively and clearly hostile to your inquiries?
Yes. No, they're not hostile to the inquiries, but it goes along party lines. And I've had some issues, and Alaska was one of the issues, because the Alaskan board recognized one person as the representative of the state Green Party, and they would not take anyone else. They wouldn't go by anyone else. And the state in Alaska at that time, they were not following the nominated presidential candidate. They were putting somebody else on the ballot.
It was Ventura, wasn't it?
Huh?
It was Ventura, wasn't it?
Yeah, they put Ventura.
A dark chapter.
Yeah. We got one rule, and they couldn't follow it.
All right, Jenny, thank you so much. I'm gonna watch for time, so I'd like to thank you for your presentation and everything that you do for the committee and everything you've done to help to put together this gathering, this discussion. So applause to you. Thank you so very, very, very much. All right, and now we're going to move on to our next speaker. Our next speaker is Patrick Romano. Patrick is out of Connecticut. He actually serves as the treasurer to the state party, one of those very unsung and very important positions. He has 30 years of campaign experience. He's going to talk to us about the importance of local campaigns. Patrick, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Yeah, being a state treasurer, I kind of got roped into it, and it's been an interesting experience. But nonetheless, I'm really glad to be a part of this panel. And frankly, I think, my piece of this is in some ways a little bit easier because ballot access, petitioning, election boards can really vary from state to state, and it's a very complicated process that can be real challenging to talk about, nationally in a convention like this. My piece of this is more to talk about, the importance of the electoral process in terms of building the state party and local parties, which I think is a little more of a universal theme. So a little bit fortunate in that regards. But yeah, I've been running campaigns for 25 years. And, when it comes to, here in Connecticut, we're fortunate. We run, we run people for federal elections, Senate, Congress. We also run a statewide slate most years when that's up. We've also, we have several candidates that have run for state assembly, state senate. And this year we're focusing a lot on local elections and just held our nomination meetings. I think the importance of running at the local level, whether it's municipal elections or a state election, for us as Greens is really to grow our party. And I kind of have a few thoughts about this. I mean, one, it really increases awareness of our party by engaging with voters while you're running your campaigns. It's a real opportunity to spotlight and highlight some of our issues and reflect our values at the local level. Frankly, there's a lot more seats to run for at the state and local levels. And what we find here in Connecticut is that, the down ticket seats are actually quite winnable. And I think we've seen that as a national party across the US over the years. So they're really good seats for Greens to run and with a real potential to win these seats. It's also a good opportunity to really build your local party or chapter, depending on the structure where you're located. Here we have a combination of what we call town committees based on the municipality you live in, or chapters, which can include a number of those towns. And finally, really developing, an opportunity to develop volunteers and potential coalition partners. So, the work at that local level and running these races, I think, just provides so many opportunities for us to grow as a party. I will say that I see people run for office sometimes and they say, well, I'm just going to throw my name on the ballot so that we have a ballot line and there's a green candidate. And that's fine. Here in Connecticut, if we get 1% of the vote, we retain our ballot line status. So in many cases, we have people that offer to do that, and we can usually get to 1% and hold our ballot line. But my suggestion is, if you're seriously considering running for office, that you really, if you're going to take it, if you want to run and you want to run a serious campaign, then really be prepared to commit yourself to that. In terms of running a campaign, there's a lot to running a campaign, and there's a lot of different dynamics depending on the size of the campaign. If you're running for school board versus assembly, state assembly, or state senate. So I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty. There's a lot of great resources. The Green Party has a lot of great resources on our website. The GCC is doing a lot of great work. I was on one of their candidate Zoom meetings last night. I strongly recommend it if you haven't joined one of those to pop in and visit. So there's a lot of good material out there, and obviously you can always buy books on how to run a campaign, etc. What my advice is really, if you're going to run for office, start by finding someone that has some experience, either to manage your race or to at least serve as an advisor, or even if there's a few folks who maybe serve as in the capacity as a kitchen cabinet, so that you have some other voices to bounce ideas off of. That's critical. I would also reach out to local, state, and even national leaders for advice and potential resources. Resources could be, as simple as helping write a budget or a campaign plan to potentially financial resources. If you do put together a team, I recommend strongly having regular team meetings to discuss strategy, review tactics, and basically measure your success. Early on in the campaign, we do these maybe twice a month. As we get closer to the election, these could become more weekly and sometimes even daily. I would also make sure that if you're building a base of volunteers, that you have regular meetings with your volunteers and or host trainings. We do a lot of these since COVID on Zoom nowadays. And also we try to have some fun events that people can come to build a little bit of camaraderie amongst the volunteers. So in terms of running a campaign, I'm just going to run through this quickly, and I'm going to pull up some notes here. I generally put campaigns into a few phases. The first phase being launching your campaign. Launching your campaign starts with finding a treasurer, understanding what the election laws are in your state, especially in terms of financing, what the election laws are regarding to that. I would look at whether it's from your Secretary of State or wherever, get a hold of an election calendar so you have a sense of the timelines and the deadlines associated with your campaign. File all the necessary paperwork. Make sure you cross your T's, dot your I's. And then you go into starting your campaign, right? Create a logo, get someone to help with a website. There's a lot of great tools out there, Canva, others that you could use. And again, if you're out reaching out to folks, there's people that can push you in the right direction as to what's some good options there. Obviously setting up some social media pages. I only recommend doing this if you're someone that's good at, that's going to use them. Creating a Facebook page or an Instagram or a TikTok that you don't post anything on or create any content, really no point to it. But they're a valuable tool because at the end of the day, what you're trying to do is get to where the voters are at. And this is a really simple way to reach people. Then you have, then there's fundraising, right? And I tell people, a lot of people, this is the most challenging part. And again, I've done this professionally for years, and it's still, even for seasoned politicians and candidates, it's one of the more challenging pieces. And it's certainly challenging for us as Greens. We don't, obviously go to the same resources that Democrats and Republicans do. But as I tell all the candidates I've ever worked with over the years, the first place you start is your own networks. And it's like dropping a rock in a lake and the circles that come out from that, starting with your closest family, friends, partners, spouses, whatever, and building out from there to, college roommates, old friends, cousins, whatever, and not being afraid to ask even for the smallest amount of donations, but saying that, and making sure that people understand that their contribution is going to pay for specific things. It's one thing to ask for a contribution. It's another to say, listen, I'm looking to buy campaign literature, or I'm preparing to order lawn signs, and I really am trying to raise funds for that. So creating not just the ask, but also the importance of the ask. And then, I would just say also there's, you can do events, you can reach out to networks, organizational partners, et cetera, to try to help build that out. And again, I'm kind of rushing through this for the sake of time. Develop your message. First and foremost, I tell every candidate, be able to answer the question, why are you running? Know why you're running and what you hope to achieve. And from there, look at what are the local issues that matter to your community, and that you could speak to them. At a local level, it could be, municipally owned utilities or local control over utilities. It could be the maintenance of the town, economic development, schools. I could tell you, as someone who has done a lot of polling over the years, even in the most liberal communities, taxes are always a top issue for working families, and keeping that in mind too. How do we create more tax fairness? Bigger issues that we're working on here in Connecticut are things that really help grow our party, such as ranked choice voting, We have a fantastic campaign finance system in Connecticut. I know other states like Maine do too, but we're working to make it even stronger for third parties. And then, issues like healthcare, et cetera. At the end of the day, I'll just say this, there's communications, right? So there's, you could do with media, you can send out press releases, right? Op-eds. A lot of that won't get picked up, I'll be honest. But letters to the editors do quite a bit. Putting out policy papers on your website and social media is always a plus. Hosting meet and greets and getting out to public places, whether it's farmers markets or diner dashes or whatever, are all good opportunities. But really, and it's professionally, we do things like direct mail, digital ads, etc. I will tell you that I tell all my candidates the number one thing that wins elections is your direct voter contact with voters, and that's at the door canvassing. My company, we don't make money off that. This is totally up to the candidate to do, and yet it is the most effective way to win an election. So I cannot stress enough that if you want to run for office and be successful in whatever your goal is, knocking on doors is the number one tactic that you should use. Okay. And then, again, I would say as you get closer to the election, just putting together a good GOTV operation, keeping in mind these days that there's a lot of places that have early voting now, a lot of places that do absentee voting. I know some states like Oregon only vote by mail, right? So there's obviously different tactics to different states. But keeping all that in mind and making sure you're reaching out to voters as ballots are getting mailed out or early voting starts, and continuing that all the way up including election day. I would like to conclude though, by just pointing out after the election's over, you shouldn't see that as the end of your campaign. To me, and I try to get this, especially with the, here in Connecticut with our candidates, to see that as the beginning of a process, right? After the election, what I tell people is the first thing we got to do is follow up with any of our ID'd supporters, volunteers, etc. A lot of times we try to hold a post-election party or some type of gathering to bring people together. And then we use that to try to get people, to keep people involved. A lot of times we'll invite them to the chapter meetings or the local party meetings or even our state central committee meeting. And then from there, to continue to stay engaged with voters. And this comes back to the issue was brought up early on about deep canvassing, is that what we're trying to push with we're working on an organizing model right now in Connecticut, is that when the election ends in November, that we build on that momentum, not just pack it up and go home till next year, but actually build on that momentum going into our legislative session to get out there and canvass and talk to people and be present, tabling, etc., specifically about issues that are coming up in our state and how they relate to the issues and the values that we're trying to push. And then, just continuing to do that and then building in that process of the post-election work and getting through the legislative session and getting out there and talking to people, then utilizing that as a stronger foundation going into the following election cycle. And I think, there's a lot to cover, but I think I'll stop there and answer any questions.
All right. First of all, I'd like to thank you so much. Your experienced professionalism absolutely shines through there. That was a brief little masterclass. We do have one question of clarification. The 1% per statewide office in Connecticut, is that for a specific statewide office? Like, are there
all offices from local to state to even statewide level? If we get 1% of the vote, we can retain our ballot status. We don't have to petition again. So it's a challenge to try to get that every election,
Excellent.
Yeah.
So what is the profile of a viable candidate? What kinds of questions should one ask themselves, and what answer should be given to say, oh, I really need to be doing this?
A viable candidate, I mean, I think someone that's really ready to do the work. Campaigning I see this a lot with candidates, that it's a lot harder, I think, than some think it's going to be, or it requires it. You're going to get out of it what you put into it, right? With anything. If you don't put a lot into it, you're not going to get a lot out of it. And that's fine. Like I said, we have people that run just to try to get that 1% and hold that ballot line. And that's strategically good for us. But if you want to really run and you're committed to being a candidate, I think that you have to understand that, you got to get out there and knock doors. You got to talk to people. You got to be, put on your calendar every event in your community and make sure you show up. That's how you're going to build your own campaign. And frankly, that's how we build our party. It shocks me to this day how many people I talk to that know I'm a green say, "Oh, aren't you the environmental people?" And I'm like, there's so much more to us than that, but that's what people know.
Okay, I'm going to call it here with the next presentation, and I'm going to open the floor wider. I do take care of some housekeeping here. First of all, in the previous presentation, in response to Adam's comments, Eric stated this definitely sounds like a policy plank to focus on accessibility issues for petition drives. I'm sorry I didn't catch that comment earlier. Also, I realized I failed to introduce myself at the beginning. My name is LeBeau Kpadenou. I gratefully serve as the co-chair of the Green Party of Florida. I've been with the party since 2017, and I also am a member of the Ballot Access Committee. Okay, moving forward, we are going to talk a little bit about systems with Chris Blankenhorn. Chris is a former Green Party U.S. co-chair and a veteran of the Howie Hawkins campaign. He used to speak on social media and tech for ballot access success. Chris, you have the floor.
Helps if I unmute.
There we go.
Thank you. And I think I'm the only one of us that has an actual slideshow, but I will share the link to it in the chat after I'm done. But yeah, my name is Chris Blankenhorn. I'm from downstate Springfield, Illinois. I'm a former GPUS co-chair. I was the 2020 systems and tech director for the Howie Hawkins campaign, and I'm a co-founder of the Green Socialist Organizing Project, which does a lot of education and training work. I'm going to start with a disclaimer. With a few exceptions, everything I'm going to talk about right now should be part of your day-to-day party work and infrastructure, right? Everything that Patrick just talked about, you need to be doing 365, right? You cannot just, oh, well, the campaign started. We're going to start posting on social media. We're going to start sending e-blasts. Your lists are cold. No one's getting your posts because of the algorithm, right? So attempting to deploy like the things I'm going to talk about in my workshop and some of the stuff that Patrick said, it's going to come with lower returns if this isn't just part of your day-to-day operations. So I want everyone to centralize that, right? We need to be doing this stuff. The foundation needs to be there if we're going to build something viable off of it. I also want to, use this as a point to say that this is why the party is important, right? Campaigns are finite. They begin and they end. The party can carry on infrastructure. It can carry on membership. It's what you are building, so that the next campaign can be a whole different person and still be a step up where you're not relying on that one thing. A warning along with that disclaimer, I've been doing workshops at the Green Party annual national meetings for almost a decade now. If you've seen them, you will be aware what's about to happen. I'm going to talk very fast. I'm going to data dump a lot of information. I usually do whole presentations at the A&M on just this. So bear with me there and be prepared for the whirlwind. But that is also just my presentation style. Organizing for ballot access right? To start it off, the drive begins well before the petitioning date. Right? As with all organizing, we're more effective if we're strategic and if we engage in robust preparatory work. So before we start our drive, we need to have our strategy, our tactics, our processes in place on day one, right? Especially coming from Illinois, we have 90 days for president. We have 90 days to collect 25,000 signatures, which means we got to get 50,000. If we're not going on day one, we're going to fail, period. End of story. We do not have time for a slow ramp up. In Ohio, I think you get over a year, you might be able to slow ramp up. So there is a level of subjectivity to that, but the rule remains, right? You need to be prepared ahead of time. Your essential staff and your volunteer roles, as much as possible, should be in place weeks, if not months before, so that you can hit that ground running. Your systems, your processes, your tools, you shouldn't be, oh, we need this. you need to have it in place, right? And you need to have people onboarded and comfortable in those systems. And then the same thing, all of your materials, right? Your flyers, your social media graphics, as evergreen as they can be, so you can use them from day one and on day 90 in the case of Illinois, right? So while these are general organizing statements, they're also true for ballot access specific work. Social media basics. Ballot access oriented social media it can only be one part. If you're only posting about ballot access, you're not going to have good returns, right? When you're talking about social media, consistency is key, right? Community members need to know who you are before you start asking them to sign petitions, and they need to know why they should be putting you on the ballot, right? Your party and your campaign should be active in this campaign from early, from before it starts. Keep selling you, right? Like I said, it can't just be ballot access. So this needs to be about, why are we signing? Right? We can't just pause everything because ballot access drive started. As much as low resource greens, right? As we're all out collecting petitions and doing all of that work, and something's got to drop, right? But if we want to have effective social media, it can't be this. We can't just get into a silo. Likes don't equal signatures or votes, right? How many likes you get doesn't have any benefit if it doesn't tie into real world action. Your post should always lead viewers to a space where they can potentially sign up, get involved, learn more, and provide you the contact information that you need to talk to them again, right? Someone liking your post doesn't give you a path to go and hand them a petition. You want them to sign up so you can email them and say, hey, you signed up. Would you like to sign a petition? Oh, you gave us your address. We're just going to knock your door, right? You have to be able to find them. Social media has to be connected to that real world work. Audience matters. Engagement from Greens around the country doesn't lead to signatures, right? When messaging around ballot access activities, your goal should be establishing real connections with local viewers. Every time a new local Green Party chapter pops up, they go on the national Facebook group and they say, everyone like my page, and they get 200 likes. But here's the problem. Facebook's only, and I'm just using Facebook as an example, any of them, the algorithm is only going to show so many of your audience your post. And if 90% of your audience isn't local, that means you're not reaching anyone, right? You have a high number of likes on your page, but it's a vanity stat. It has nothing to do with the algorithm. It's just all of a sudden 90% of your people can't actually help you, and you're not reaching the people you need to. So you really need to think about who you're communicating with and how you grow. Multi-platform approach. Don't pigeonhole yourself in one platform. Leverage the strengths, right? If you've got a young, engaging candidate, get them on Instagram, get them on TikTok, right? If you've got, someone who likes to do more policy posts, right? You're going to need to learn how to break those down and post them in specific places, right? How that content plays different places. Always connect to the real world, right? Noise in the digital void triggers dopamine responses. Right? Oh my God, that edgelord thing I just said really got a lot of response on Twitter. That's great. A world of a digital cesspool is happy with you. What did it do? Did it bring anyone to the table? Is anyone sitting in your meeting new now? Right? We've got to see social media as a tool to support our real world work and not as the work itself, right? If all we're doing is social media, we're not going to succeed. Period. End of story. I don't want to undersell social media. It is a powerful tool, but at the same time, too many Greens just get in that box, right? And we're posted on social media. We're good. No, you need to be knocking on doors, right? You need to be talking to people. You need to be organizing every day in your community around important issues, which goes to the last one. Always connect to local issues. It's great that we support Medicare for all, but what does that do in our park race, right? How does that apply? That doesn't mean we drop it, right? Parks have a lot of things we can talk about in terms of healthcare, right? From just being green space and getting a sky above our head and the dirt below our feet, to the fact that homeless populations often live there, and therefore our parks can often have public health risks, and they're supposed to be community public safety, safe spaces. But we always have to make sure that we're connecting back to those local issues and keeping in mind, what are we running for, right? That's not to say you can't espouse your broader values, right? Those are important. Those are good, but we've always got to be connecting back. Our job on campaigns is to make connections to what matters in people's lives. the role of campaigns in ballot access is it's a little different, right? Now we've got two entities operating, right? And campaigns are they're independent. They get to kind of do their own thing. So while parties should be carrying the infrastructure, right? When you run as a green, you should be given contact lists. You should be given access to email marketing strategies, their website hosting, and all of that should be set up. Your communication, I need to go get your own Zoom because the party should have it. They should provide it. When you say, I want to live stream, the party should say, we've got a StreamYard account. Boom, you're a user, right? What is a resource from a party perspective? I do whole workshops on because I think it's important. So while the party should carry a lot of that, campaigns are the face of your ballot access drive, right? That's who we're trying to put on the ballot. Period. Like, yes, it's Green Party. Yes, it's bigger than the one candidate. But at the end of the day, that's the person whose face we're putting on the ballot, right? That's the person who's going to speak for us. That's the person whose name's going to be there. So the candidate and their platform, their aesthetics, their style, all of that should be heavily featured. Party work should be like a signal boost and a point back, right? The party should be supplemental, should be uplifting. And another thing from the campaign perspective, campaigns are often able to revolutionize in ways that parties can't, right? They often have more money, they often have more energy, they often have more volunteers. So this is a time that you can say, hey, we've always wanted to try to do X or try to pick up this system. Let's see how it works with a campaign, right? They're great demo spaces where you can say, how does this canvassing application work, right? Will it work well for us on the long term? Is it something we want to invest in long term? Well, here's a short snippet of time with a finite goal that we can test it out in, and we can see. And that those campaigns usually also have a little more money to put into something like that. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's collaborative. So while sometimes there's that distance that's necessary, ballot access can't happen just based on a candidate. It's just not going to happen. For years, people have asked me, who do you think the first Green congressional winner will be? And I always say, it's not a person. The question is, which local chapter, which regional Green Party can build a base, can build a foundation that can support a truly serious congressional campaign? Right now, that's Pittsburgh. Right, I'm going to put Allegheny County as my #1 Green Party in the state, in the country. Right, they're on the cusp of winning city council races. Right, and they're really collaborative. They're really organizing. Baltimore's right behind them. Right, these are some great spaces. But it's not a question of who. It's a question of what organization can we build that can actually win these races at the big level. And as much as possible, we should share infrastructure between us. Right, we don't want to both buy Zoom accounts. That is money flushed down the toilet, right? We don't, if the party has something that's an asset, share it. In Illinois right now, in preparation for our 2026 drive, we're talking about hiring a social media person for the party. And one of the things I've advocated for is, as the campaigns, spin up, and as the campaigns get funding, that same person should be paid to do their stuff too. So now we have one person, centralizing a lot of the party work. They can train people. We can, spread it out amongst volunteers instead of each one having to do their own independent thing. So the collaboration between the party and the campaign is super important. You just kind of have to know where they fit in the puzzle. I kind of went through this, but, what resources does your party bring to the table? If you're going to win a ballot access drive, it's because the party is organized. This could be not necessarily true for the smallest of local offices, right? If you've only got to collect a few dozen, you can get it done. But anytime we're talking about state house and above, probably you're going to need an organized party. So ask yourself, as a Green Party organizer, right, for your state or local party, when a potential candidate approaches me and says, I want to run Green, what do we bring to the table? We cannot win on the money level. Period. End of story. Right. The Dems have more billionaire donors in 2024 than the Republicans. Right. We're going against the capitalist system, and it's too you know, it's two-headed snake. We can't win at that game. So what can we bring to the table? And I'm a big advocate that right now at our current capacity, systems are what the Green Party can bring to the table, right? Contact lists and the skills and tools and members that know how to use them. Communications platforms like Basecamp, Lumio, right? Website hosting. If you can build a website and get it off the ground and host it for that candidate, right? The Illinois Green Party has unlimited hosting. It costs us nothing, but it takes something off their plate. Engagement tools, phone banking, social scheduling, all these tech systems and apps. If the party has them, they can be shared, right? If the party has them, we can link up and we can, you know, use them to magnify instead of being duplicative. And then more than anything else, experienced organizers, right? So not only does the party bring in resources to the table, give the leg up to the campaigns, it also ensures consistency, right? We don't want every different campaign in our state using a different email marketing system. Why? Like, not only before we get into the idea of whether we're all paying separately, we're all learning a different process, which means we're not compatible when we want to work together, right? So it gives us that level of consistency. And I said email marketing, Greens hate it. I understand it's scummy. you feel scummy doing it. There's a reason for that. We're organizing in a capitalist system and a capitalist electoral process, right? And there's just a level of scumminess to it, and we got to get over it. But you can't engage with people if you can't contact them directly, right? That's one of, like I said, that's one of the major issues with social media. The interaction is fleeting and superficial. It doesn't lead to anything long term. It just gives you a dopamine hit, right? We're just addicts on it. A like doesn't provide the ability to let someone know, you know, to get to that person. For that, we need an email, we need a phone number, and we need an address. Those are the things that let us talk to a real person in the real world and have them sign a real piece of paper until we get Adam's thing done, because it's a huge point that in addition to all the other terrible things about our ballot access system across the country, it's ableist, right? The way it's set up is excluding people. And it should be noted, coming from a state like Illinois, one of the most progressive in the country, it's designed to be repressive and exclusive, right? That's the goal. So until we get past that, we need those things. So we need to use our list. Just having a list isn't useful, right? We badly need to do it. We need to learn these skills, how to write a fundraising email, right? How to do targeting, how to run A/B tests. And these things are built into these systems, right? So we should be actively managing your lists. If someone's never opened your email, try the phone. If they've never answered the phone, try knocking the door, right? That's why we want this multiple tiers. But if you just keep sending an email that the person's never opening, you're not making that connection. They're not on your list despite being there. You need to be regularly emailing, right? If you don't, your list is going to go cold. It means that no one's going to get the email. I don't want to say the more, because you don't want to flood people, but when you have a consistent repetition to your emails, Gmail, Yahoo, all of these systems start to recognize you, and they start to say, hey, maybe this isn't spam, right? And they let it through. If you email once a year, it's going to spam. That's where it's going for most people. It's going straight to spam. You need to be so you need to keep your lists warm is what it's called. You should be upskilling your team on effective engagement and fundraising, right? Okay, we're doing it. Step one, right? We've climbed one rung of the ladder. Great job. Now let's do it better, right? So once you get that baseline set, start taking some classes, right? There's free resources all over the place. Watch YouTube videos, take classes, go to your local, as someone who works for the community colleges, go to your local community college. We can give you a really affordable certificate in social media management, right? And we're right there in your community. So you should be upskilling yourself. You should be experimenting. What works, what doesn't? Don't be afraid to fail, right? We're the underdogs. We're going to have to throw some Hail Marys. We're going to have to try some things. And that means we're going to stumble a lot. We're going to swing and miss a lot. And you need to be sharing your lists with your campaigns, right? Campaigns bring new energy. So you provide them with the baseline to get started, and then they feed that back in. And that can help the longevity, right? That makes sure that we keep this thing going and it doesn't just end. But we got to be growing our lists, both as campaigns and as parties. So we need to, campaigns are often that one of those moments of growth, but we can boost this by actively working to grow our base. Surveys, petitions, in-person signups, these are things that you can use. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but if you have ever signed an online petition, all that you did was give someone your email. It was not turned in. It did not do anything except gave someone your email. Do you want that person to have your email? I mean, it's great that you support ending fracking, but you just gave it to the Sierra Club, who in Illinois went behind closed doors with the oil industry and legalized fracking, right? Meanwhile, those of us in the Green Party and our allies were getting arrested outside the governor's office calling for a moratorium, right? So that's, we kind of have to bite the bullet and say, that's what this is for. It can also be for data though, right? One of the things I'm most proud about in the 2020 campaign was we did regular issues surveys and they showed we were right, at least with the green base. We were right about what the key issues were in 2020, right? And that was validated by hundreds, thousands of responses that we got through surveys. And then we got to follow up with those people. Oh, you think healthcare is really important. Let's target them for healthcare ads, right? So it can make it better, right? It doesn't have to just be scummy, even though it is. There's some benefit there too. You can really get to know. But at the end of the day, admit, we're doing petitions because we want your email address, right? Bite the bullet, admit it, turn to the dark side and start email marketing, right? You can also supplement them. Voter rolls are great, right? You can get a voter roll, but it doesn't necessarily contain that email, right? You might just have someone's email. You might not have their phone number. And there are third-party companies, and again, scummy because it's scummy, but they will supplement these lists. If you have emails, they'll tell you the phone number, right? And they're actually incredibly affordable a lot of the time on the small scale. We used them in 2020 to take those voter rolls and make them something useful. Because voter rolls often don't include phone numbers or email addresses. Like I said, and then real world edition, right? Like I said, everything's got to be in the real world. Email and social marketing are great. They should be part of your toolbox, a big part of your toolbox, but you've got to be able to reach people in the real world, right? And so for ballot and this is exponentially more true for ballot access, where you need someone to sign a piece of paper, right? So we've got to get contact lists into the real world via petitions, via walk sheets. A serious campaign is going to be knocking on doors. A winning campaign is going to knock a lot of doors. There is no alternative to this. Tech support, it's the system that lets you be efficient and effective and data-driven, but it doesn't do the work, right? TikTok, ChatGPT, and email can't put a pen in someone's hand and put that pen on paper. So it's really important that we do this. Illinois, we have a green mayor. It's a nonpartisan race. So he's not, Peter Schwartzman green, but he's a green mayor. He's been in the party forever. When he won, after 10 years of being a city councilor, he ran. The Democrats gave him walk lists that haven't had him skipping 2/3 of the city because they only talk to their base. They don't talk to non-voters. They don't talk to independents, and they sure as hell don't talk to Republicans, right? They were skipping it. He threw the lists out because he wanted to talk to everyone, and he did, right? If you're running a campaign and you consider yourself serious, you should, like Peter, you should be able to tell me, how many doors did your campaign knock? Weekly, monthly, total, right? How many did you knock? How many days in a row did you knock on doors or touch hands with people? In Peter's case, I think it was something like 137 days in a row that he either knocked doors or shook people's hands at events and talked, right? So you've got to do this. Walk lists are a great way to do it. Walk lists can help you be effective, data-driven, and efficient in your canvassing too, right? We don't drop them just because it's no longer petition season. We need to keep detailed notes. Who's been talking to Bob? What have we been oh, Bob's really, really, really mad about the state of our public works, right? Oh, in my town, hey, Bob, did you know that every year Public Works and the police ask for the same amount of money? The police get 99% of their funding and Public Works gets 38. Your roads suck because we're investing in authoritarian policing, right? We can get to abolish the police, right? But we've got to get there through those local issues. We've got to get there through making those connections. For most green campaigns, I'll be honest, Excel slides is probably all you need, right? In a local race, you don't need to be investing in eCanvasser or any of these big tools. You probably don't have the budget for them anyway, right? So a good spreadsheet can go a really long way. Combine that with your CRM, your contact management database like Nation Builder, Action Network. They also might have some built-in stuff, right? And then there's third-party options. Greens use Nation Builder a lot, so I will mention it. I hate it, but I will mention it. Get off of Nation Builder. It's expensive and not a good tool, but that's my editorial on that. But it can cut turf and walk lists for you, right? There is a function in there that can give you walk lists based out of your contact list. Don't skip the doors that aren't on there, right? We don't have everybody's in email, but gets you that start. eCanvasser is pretty expensive but powerful. This would be good for statewide campaigns probably, but it connects to all these databases and gives you mobile app. So when your people are in the field, they don't have to have a clipboard or anything. They can just type away on their phone with their notes or what they need. Trailblazer's a little bigger. It does turf cutting, get out the vote, compliance. I actually think Patrick would probably have suggestions here. The truth is a lot of these third-party software options are going to price out greens. It's the trend of tech right now. If you would have been at one of my workshops a few years ago, you'd have heard me talking about Hootsuite. A free account on Hootsuite, you get 3 social media accounts, and you can post up to 15 times scheduled. For like $15, you got unlimited. That there's no more free. It's $50 to start now. Right. I can still tell you what you can use for free, but the tech landscape has changed and small organizations have really been priced out in the last half decade. So,
2 minutes, Chris.
Yep. That's a lot for that. You've got your voter rolls, right, that you can dive into. The one thing I did want to mention was signature check systems, right? If you buy your voter rolls, you can set up a spreadsheet. You can check these signatures. You can know how many you have going in, right? If we've got to collect 25,000 valid signatures, I would like to know how many we have that are actually valid per the voter rolls, right? So you can set up signature check systems through Excel, through other database management systems. That's something to look at. And then a few resources. Like I said, I'm going to put the link for this in the end, but I do multi-hour workshops on these. So here's some of them. I've got one on campaign, petitioning and ballot access, project or campaign systems and tech, local media basics, social media for grassroots organizations, and then some basic organizing ones. So like I said, I talked really fast, went through a whole bunch of slides. I will share them so people can digest and stop it there.
All right, I'm going to open the floor for another 2 minutes for questions. As I search the chat for questions also. First of all, how are you giving out free hosting? Do you just pay for a big account? And
yeah, so our state party has a Green Geeks. So with hosts, they're one in a million. If you got one, you've got one. They all offer basically the same services. So whether you're going with Bluehost or Green Geeks or whatever you go, it doesn't really matter. But we have a Green Geeks account that allows us unlimited email addresses and unlimited websites. And so when someone comes on, all we have to do is have them point by their domain, point their name servers at us, and then we will build them a WordPress Divi based website. We have a template one pager where it's just like, candidate picture, 4 different things, and then we can build it out from there. But we can really within less than a week turn around a website for somebody for free. Want to talk to your financial people because you may want to do some reporting stuff, both as a campaign, as a party, because you're crossing streams. So you need to look into that a little. But I mean, I'll be frank, at our level, at our capacity, no one, the FEC, I will say, because people asked about local organizations, the FEC I've always seen acting in good faith. I've never, and they're not out to get people. They really do tend to want. Now, everything's different under this administration, so that is the asterisk. But with the FEC, if you're trying to do good, they generally aren't going to come at you.
all right. First of all, I want to go through and introduce all of our speakers again. I'd like to thank Eric LaRue, Ginny Lester, Patrick Romano, and Chris Blankenhorn for taking the time out and to share information with you. I'd like you to invite you all to briefly unmute yourselves and give an actual round of applause. Thank you so much to our speakers. I want to give the speakers an opportunity to once again add any links that they think people should have to the chat so that they'll be there at the bottom and people can grab them. Also, if you want people to be able to contact you, then please feel free to add in your contact information down there, and we'll give everyone a chance to
I
collect
was going to say, I can't, I'm legally blind, so I can't really read the chat. I'm just trying to figure out how I can get a list of the links and all that.
So if someone were to email them to you, would you be able to access them?
Actually, if someone could send it to me in a plain text form, in a text message, that would be probably a lot better. It's hard for me to receive emails very well.
All right, I have saved the entire chat. Let me make sure I have that safe on my disk. I'm going to open the floor while I'm working in the background. I can't see the screen.
Yeah.
Please feel free to unmute yourself and ask questions of the speakers while I make sure that I have this information.
And I can actually give you my phone number.
I would not say that out loud over this.
Yeah,
'cause
you
it's gonna
don't
go
want
on
to do that.
YouTube.
You're going to want to does anyone here have Adam's direct contact information already?
I've just got him on Facebook.
All right. Adam, can you
D said to send them to her, detailer.
all right.
Oh,
So I will
okay.
send the notes to D. If someone else could also save the whole chat, I can't find it on my computer. I don't know where it puts it. I just want to make sure that someone else has access to it.
I saved it.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. How are we doing on time?
Couple minutes.
All right, we got 3 minutes. Does anyone have anything they want to add? Then I will do a little wrap up. Go ahead, please.
I was just going to say July is Disability Pride Month. A lot of people don't know that. So today is actually the last day of Disability Pride Month.
Thank you so much for that announcement. We definitely appreciate that information. And yes, we definitely need to address the issue of ableism in dealing with ballot access. All right. So once again, I want to thank our speakers. Eric, thank you so much for sharing how Nevada is using ballot access to increase and build your own state party out there. Gini, thank you so much for sharing with us the difficulties of managing the many different sets of laws, the 50 sets, in fact, that involve it, and putting out the invite for people in the state parties who know these laws to join the Ballot Access Committee. Patrick, thank you so much for sharing your extensive knowledge and experience in running campaigns at all the levels and what a state party can do to help support and bring in those campaigns. And Chris, thank you so much for your discussion on systems and how ballot access is only a small portion, but an important portion of our overall systems that help our party succeed. Thank you, Rita, for helping to manage this, and thank you to the Green Party US for giving us this space and this room to speak. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see all the rest of you at other upcoming events. Thank you so much.
Thank you for hosting.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely. I think we can end the recording now.